There we go.
All right. All right, we're going to reconvene into open session. There's no action to take from the closed session. So start of the business session of the school board meeting. Number 4, report from student representatives.
Okay. What? Stand up.
Yeah, introduce yourself, please.
Okay. Hi, my name is Kat Helmus. I'm a senior.
I'm Emily Fazal. I'm a junior.
As member of the student council, we're here to update you again on what's happening in our school community.
Starting with girls basketball, our girls beat Nakusa last night and have 4 wins this season. We're excited to share that one of our senior players, Taylor Martin, just reached her 1,000 points and 500 rebounds. The boys basketball team is tied for second in conference with a record of 12 wins and 8 losses. JV is also having a strong season. We are excited for the boys' great season and the years ahead. Coming up, our baseball and softball seasons are starting soon, and open gyms are taking place as our players get ready for the 2022 season.
Outside of sports in March, 3 of our high school students are going to Bemidji, Minnesota for a weekend Spanish intermission trip at Concordia Language Village. And then Drama Club has decided to put on a performance later in the spring. They're putting on a variety show with skits and acts performed by various groups and students. The performance will take place on Friday, May 20th. And then finally, we have 2 upcoming events. There's a forensic meet at John Edwards High School on February 21st. And then the National Honor Society induction is next Wednesday, February 16th at 6 p.m. in the library, and you're welcome to come.
Thanks for taking the time to hear about what's happening at our high school.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the students?
Emily, and what was your name?
Kat.
Kat.
Like, few of the seniors may have a dance coming up too.
Oh yeah, we're having a dance February 26th.
All right. Well, thank you very much. You're free to leave if you.
Or you can stay and
Or
listen.
just-
to
yeah.
it. Actually, the audit report, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, next on the agenda, the president's report. All board members are in attendance. And our next board meeting would be, March 9th. Wednesday, March 9th. So I'll move to administrative reports. Hey, update on 2019 referendum progress. Superintendent Cronin.
So we're halfway through the 5-year referendum. And I wanted to just give you a sense of what we've accomplished and a few things that are not accomplished yet and maybe need to look at down the road. I'm not going to read the entire list, but I put together a list, and I'm going to get this published in our newsletter so people see what we've done. I will say that some of these items were part referendum, part grant money, or part referendum, part COVID relief money. So there are several items or partnership items with the Booster Club or PEEF. So there are some items on here that were of that sense, as well food service items, where some things in food service might have been food service fund, but yet maybe some of the referendum money helped to make that also possible. So, but there's a lot of these items that we were able to do them because of the referendum. And just to give you a sense, and again, I won't go over everything. So we've got about 65 items that by the end of this summer we'll have hopefully accomplished. In reality, I think it's like 57 that are accomplished out of that list. K-12 science, curriculum resources, math, elementary math curriculum, 3-9 language arts have all been possible due to the referendum. So those updates, and people, don't often understand what a curriculum update can run $25,000, $35,000. So those are large items. Obviously, the elementary school, we're sitting in a remodeled library. We have new carpeting, new lighting, new curtains in many of the classrooms this summer. The last of the classroom areas is slated to be finished with carpet, lighting, and we'll work on getting curtains in that area. And those updates have been ongoing. And this building certainly has a completely different look than it did 3 years ago. few other areas, things such as resealing and repainting out the track, resealing windows on the middle school, high school building. Big job. We've got to bring lifts in, and we've been working with a company to make sure those things are done. Installing carpet in some rooms, some of the tree work that we've had done. We've had significant work done on trees on the Little Hawks classroom, in the school forest, and at the middle school, high school property. That's not inexpensive work. We've done things such as renovate the walk-in cooler at the middle school, high school. Worked with the Booster Club on the installation of new scoreboards. New lighting in the elementary kitchen. Air conditioning in the high school kitchen area. 512 math resources. Replaced the roof section over the music and technology education area. Installed digital controls in the HVAC in the music, tech, and food service areas. Worked on updating digital controls in other parts of the building. Remodeled the high school library with new carpet, new ceilings, some new electrical, paint. So some significant work done in those areas. Removed asbestos from piping in the art room, library, and in the technology education area, and recovered that piping with new materials, new insulation. New classroom doors in the art room. The art room went through a major remodel with flooring. The middle school hallways with flooring. We've repurposed the high school library computer lab to be a high-tech production computer lab versus a word processing lab. We got to get our staff trained on it now because there's some really neat technology in there. And on a side note, we're going to start having some discussions with our technology folks from CISA 5. We may need to look at decommissioning some computer labs. With the one-to-one technology, that space doesn't see the use that it did by any stretch of the imagination, not even close. Or repurposing or somehow doing some different things there. Or looking at different technologies. We cleaned and coated the cast lime steps at the middle school, high school to prevent further degradation of salt and water. We replaced the steps on the 7-8 door. We replaced the sidewalk from the band and choir and technology education areas. Those were significant projects. We replaced sidewalk with asphalt by the 5-6 doors. Upgraded camera systems, and we have more camera upgrades planned in a couple of spots in the buildings. Worked on new stair treads in the middle school, high school. Painted all the lockers. Added new signage in multiple places in the district. Most significantly, the middle school, high school. Landscape updates. Done a lot with landscaping, especially at the middle school, high school, to really clean that up. It creates a more secure environment because you can see areas around the building we used to not be able to see, and it makes it look much nicer than it did. What we've got going on right now, social studies curriculum review. They're in the process of that. Chemistry lab remodel, which we've talked a lot about. A new roof over the Dorothy Alexander Auditorium and chemistry areas. That really is going to help. As we looked at the roofing there, we moved into the chemistry area, not just the Dorothy Alexander, but it is connected into the chemistry area. We weren't originally going to look at that, but with the HVAC changes to chemistry, all the HVAC is going above the chemistry lab now, and that it just made sense. If we're gonna put all the HVAC up there, that roof system is one of our older systems. It makes sense to get that in good shape now. That way we don't get the new system, the new HVAC up there, and in 3 years we're replacing a roof around it. So, and it's significant HVAC going up above. So made sense to do that. We are looking at replacing the gymnasium outside exit doors at the middle school, high school. The door frames are rusting, and you can actually see through some of the door frames. So Mr. Neve is working on quotes to replace those. We're working on continued ceiling and lighting replacements in the middle school and high school in classrooms that we have not touched yet with ceiling and lights. That's primarily in the middle school area. We've gotten some of the rooms, but there are other rooms that we need to get to yet. The deck at the ELC is heaving due to freezing. And so we can save the deck, but we need to do some pretty significant work and probably putting new footings in and doing some work to that this summer. If you actually walk on the deck, you'll feel like you're walking uphill. And so we got to get that straightened out and dealt with before we lose that deck. So quite a few things, some future things that I'll mention. I would say this, in general, we will probably start to wind down the major projects in the last year of the referendum, in part because we've got to deal with some inflation, and without additional funding at the moment from the state, we're going to have to deal with some inflation in our food service dollars, our maintenance dollars, in terms of supplies, healthcare. So in the last year of the referendum, I would not look to expect a lot of major work. We'll still try to accomplish some pieces. There's some COVID relief money we can use in some of those efforts, especially when it comes to HVAC and some of those. But at that point, we'll probably need to wind that down after this coming summer. Some things though that need to be, we need to continue to work on, whether or not we have a referendum in place. Locker room doors at the middle school, high school, most of those are shot. A lot of the classroom doors are shot. They are delaminating, and we do have a product that we put in the art room that is a really solid product. We really like it, and we'd like to replicate that in other areas where we've got some of the doors delaminating. And it's the doors from like the 50s and 60s editions that are really, really struggling. The older doors are not. It's the those doors put in the 50s and 60s. We need to look at doing some work in the music commons area and tech ed area on flooring yet, and doing some work to really in tech ed. It's probably not going to be so much installing a new floor as it's going to be pulling out tile and going into maybe, again, more of that polished concrete look, maybe not as aggressive as we did in the middle school, high school, but a system such as that's just going to be easier to take care of over time. The other science labs, middle school and the biology lab, will need some updating. Ceiling area in the band. We need to look at replacing down the road the generator at the high school. We may want to look at adding a generator to this facility at some point as well. So we've done a lot. There is more work that I didn't mention on my list. And there's certainly a lot of projects that I didn't mention that we've been able to accomplish. But when you look back at the last 2.5 years of what we've been able to do in the midst of COVID, I'm really proud of what our folks have been able to get done, the projects we've been able to take on, and it's really increasing the life of our buildings, of our facilities, making them welcoming for our students and our staff and our families. So thank you for the time. Any questions?
A lot accomplished.
Yep, a lot. Like I said, the list is longer than I was going to read you.
Yeah.
I
But
thought you read them all.
Almost. There's a lot on that list. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item is report on CTE Month, Principal Schroeder.
Good evening. Not only is February bringing us more sunshine, we are also celebrating a lot of things, as you hear on the radio. But at school, we're celebrating CTE Month. It recognizes the efforts and the achievements that we're promoting in our programs. Career and technical education bridges gap between high school and professional post-secondary plans. It includes career skill trainings that help students become ready for college or work. We focus on students' academic, employability, and technical skills used in specific applications or occupations. Last year I invited Marissa to speak, Family and Consumer Education. We have Steve Bruno today who's going to speak because we didn't know if Marissa was going to make it. And then next year I told our new business education teacher that it's his turn. He's new, so we're giving him cutting him a little slack. Do you want me to set my timer? Steve is always excited to, very flexible and willing to do anything. So as soon as I asked, he said, absolutely. We like to brag about our programs to you, to the community. We've got great things going and a lot of people don't get to come in and see it. So, ready?
Okay, so like Ms. Schroeder said, the month of February is Career and Technical Education Month. I have an update from each department. The business department is being run by Mr. Jensen. His statement here was, the business department is doing well. I have had some big shoes to fill, being Gary Spencer's replacement and all, but we're doing great so far. Staff and students have been great and are making me feel right at home. We're looking at offering a couple of dual credit classes starting next year, some being options previously offered, and one being a brand new class that he will be taking a class for this summer. It's been great joining the Blackhawk family, and I'm very excited to see what the future holds. The FACE department, run by Ms. Rubishki. Great things are happening in the family and consumer sciences this year. The move to trimesters has been great for cooking labs, as the extended class periods allow us more adequate time to complete cooking labs. Culinary 2 students will soon get the chance to prepare dinner for the judges and the advisors for the upcoming forensics meet being hosted at the high school on February 21st. It will be a good chance for them to put their skills to work for others. This is the first year I'm offering the new mental wellness and stress management class that is transcripted through Mid-State Technical College. I've heard a lot of great things from students, and I think they're really seeing a benefit to this class besides just the 3 Mid-State credits that they can receive. From Tech Ed, obviously I'm speaking for myself. In the Technology Education Department, we are able to offer 2 transcripted classes this year. In the home maintenance class, students built a shed that will be given to the Port Edwards Lions Club to benefit our community even further. The students gained valuable skills and had a great time being able to build something that will last many years to come. With the trimester schedule, I am able to offer more classes throughout the year than I would with a semester schedule. I am able to offer 9 classes at the high school level each year, which gives students many options to choose from. I definitely agree with Ms. Rubishki that the longer classes are beneficial for project-based classes. Although time management is slightly different with a trimester, I look forward to my classes in the future. Along with the classes that students can take, high school students can join the co-curricular group Skills USA, which promotes personal and professional development in the skilled trades. Although we most likely will not compete this year at any events, the students have been very active with fundraising to help with future costs of those events.
Is
Thank
that
you.
the beef sticks?
Oh yes, beef sticks. We do great with beef sticks.
What'd we nickname you yesterday?
Carnivore, or wait, what was it? Carnivore Carnival or something like that,
Something,
yeah. Or Captain Carnivore, Captain Carnivore.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So you're liking the trimesters.
Trimester.
I think it's been pretty beneficial so far, for the most part. I mean, it's a little bit different with timing and try and manage the time and make sure we get through it, but overall, it's been positive for at least project-based classes I've heard.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item C, annual audit report, Clifton Larson Allen LLP.
I'd like to introduce our auditor, Amber Danielski from CLA.
Good evening, everyone.
So just to give our annual report.
And she puts up with us for a couple of days in the office every year.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, our team really enjoys working with you guys, and I know it goes both ways. We've had a few turnover things like everybody else, but I feel like we were able to work through all this stuff and have kind of, we've always been able to work through and get our questions answered and get through the audit. So I'm gonna go through a bunch of different pages in the bound document this year. And then at the end, I just have a few updates for what's coming for this next school year and things that the district needs to be working on in preparation for the audit, because it will be July 24th.
Yeah.
So starting just past the table of contents is the opinion letter. It starts out by talking about, on page 1, what we're giving our opinion on. So what type of financial statements there are, what management's responsibility is for those financial statements, and then what auditing responsibilities we have, what standards we follow, and whether it's, and here I will point out, governments, so school districts follow regular auditing standards plus government auditing standards. So there's a little bit extra stuff we look at just because you guys get government funding. Not as much as if you'd spend more than $750,000 of federal funds every year. That's an entirely different audit. And depending on how your COVID money goes this year, it might actually happen. But so it's a little bit more in depth than even just what a regular audit would go through if you weren't a government. So moving then to page 2, the top part talks about our opinion. And our opinion states that the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects. What that means is when we did our audit testing, we did not find anything that was significantly misstated or materially incorrect that would cause us to say something different in that opinion. It's a clean audit opinion, which is what the district strives for. I will say when we do our audits, we don't look at every single transaction, otherwise we'd be here even longer than what Cal and Lisa want us to be. So we pick samples, we look at where risk might be the highest, that something could be recorded incorrectly or just missing something. So and that's the way every audit goes, and we look at revenues and expenses and cash, different things along those lines. The second paragraph is emphasis of matter paragraph. This is something that happens when there's like a specific type of correction or something new. And this year it's something new. And this, I talked about it last year when I presented the audit, where there was going to be a new accounting rule that changed how you reported your student activities, your clubs, and the scholarships. And so this paragraph is explaining that that change happened. And as a result of that change, instead of having separate pages that showed the balances in your student activities and your scholarships, that got rolled into your donations fund, your Fund 21. So you won't see special pages anymore for those scholarships or student activity funds. And that is what happened at most of the districts that I audited in the state. There were a few that there were some unique situations that kept things still separate, but for the most part, every district had to make that change. Moving then to page 6. These are your ending balances as of June 30th, 2021. We'll focus more on the general fund. The other governmental funds column, that's going to be your donations fund, your debt service, your food service, and long-term capital improvement fund. But so your general fund, which is your main operating fund, had just under $1.9 million in total assets at year end. $982,000 was in cash. Almost $600,000 was in taxes receivable, which then would have been received in August from the county from the settlement. And then you had $300,000 outstanding in a receivable for your grants from the state government. And so those are your, and then you have a few little smaller receivables to make up the rest of the amount. For liabilities, your main liability is accounts payable, which that can fluctuate every year depending on timing of payments to various vendors in June. And then accrued liabilities that can be payroll related, FICA stuff that doesn't get paid out until July. That $60,000 for due to other funds, that was a transfer made to the long-term capital improvement fund that'll be spent once you hit that 5-year period set by DPI. Then you can spend those once you hit that 5 years, which is a couple years out, I believe. Yeah. And so your remaining balance is your fund balance of $1,586,000. This entire amount is unassigned fund balance, which means nobody outside of the district has put any restrictions on how you can spend it, and nobody internally at the district has put any limitations on how you can spend that. What that then means is you can use that for unanticipated expenditures and cash flow. And one of the things we always look at with that balance is, especially when it comes to cash flow, because some districts sometimes have to short-term borrow to have enough cash to pay in February and different times. And this balance is one of those factors that helps you determine whether or not you do need to short-term borrow or not.
Can I
Yep.
interrupt for one moment?
Mm-hmm.
We have not had to short-term borrow this year for the first time in 3 or 4 years at the moment. And I'll just say that at the
Yeah.
moment, because typically by now we have short-term borrow.
Yeah. And I would agree, usually when districts have to do that, it's usually this November through February timeframe, just because you don't get your taxes have kind of dried up by then, but you don't get your final state aid payments until June and July. And so the timing difference, it does fall in there. And so, one of the calculations we do with that is what percentage of expenditures, kind of just to be like a crude accounting, like if no revenues came in, how many months could we pay bills with? And we do that as a ratio. And we always recommend somewhere between 15% to 25%, just because of that timing of the state aid payments and taxes. And this year you get 21%. So you're right in that sweet spot. I will say some districts do set it lower, but then they choose to do more of a short-term borrow than what you guys have done. Any questions on the balance sheet?
And we've been able to do that, work our way back to that and accomplish all those other projects,
Yes.
which has been fabulous.
Yes.
Moving then to page 8, this is your income statement. So this is your total revenues and total expenditures for the year. So you had $7.8 million in revenues, primarily made up in state aids and taxes. And then the inter-district sources, that's gonna be your open enrollment items. And then your total expenditures were $7.6 million. So you had a gain in fund balance after that transfer to the long-term capital improvements fund of $158,000. And if you want more information about how you did the budget to actual, that's a little bit further back in the page, but basically you were under budget on revenues, but you were under budget on expenditures, so that's how you got to where you're at for this year. Then moving all the way to the back to page 53, I want to point this out to you just so you're aware, with the different federal funding that the district has received due to the CARES funding and everything, the rules changed and we had to specifically note in this schedule what was COVID funding and what wasn't COVID funding, just so it's easier to the readers to see. So I know the writing is small, but you'll see that under the ESSER funding, there was $203,000 spent this year, which led you to have total federal expenditures of $722,000. So, you know, in prior years, you would have been closer to that 500,000 range, and just that ESSER funding pushed you that much closer to the $750,000 threshold. And like I said earlier,
I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this or not. We worked actively to make sure we
you were,
didn't. hit
everybody
the
kind of
750.
shifted some
We
expenses to
shifted
make
things 'cause
sure
That's,
pushing it towards
yeah,
this year.
that's another expense
Right.
in reality that we pay for the added audit.
And everybody kind of shifted with their budgets to, because you'd had time to spend some of it. So we anticipate some more of that being spent faster now, especially as there hasn't been as much new stuff provided. So, but something we always look at every year, and obviously if it trips a single audit, it trips a single audit, and we'll test those items. As part of the audit, we do always look at your internal controls though, whether you have federal grants where we have to do that testing for, or even just if the state wants us to do testing, because the state requires us to test certain programs every year no matter what. And then other programs at least once every 3 years. So when we're doing that, we do at times find control deficiencies that we point out. And we do have the same 4 findings that I've talked about in the previous years. Segregation of duties, because you just have limited personnel to handle all the transactions, and outsourcing the preparation of this report. This report is supposed to be prepared by the finance team, and then we would audit it, but for cost benefit purposes, most districts contract with us to prepare it, but because it is outsourced and not prepared internally, it does rise to a finding level. And then we repeat some of those specific to the grants, because there's times where the grant stuff is different requirements and different levels of scrutiny than what regular everyday accounting falls under. And then with that, the only other thing I want to mention is, like I said, this year you had new accounting stuff that changed with the student activities and scholarships. Well, in 21-22's fiscal year financial statements, there's going to be more changes, and it's going to result around leases. So if you lease copiers, if you lease, you know, anything that lasts over a year, if you're leasing somebody else's property, somebody else's equipment, you have to account for that differently. On the same token, if you're getting lease revenue in, you know, say you have a cell phone tower, a cell phone agreement, you're getting revenue in from the cell phone companies, you got to account for that differently. DPI has given some guidance about how they want it recorded, and then there's extra stuff about how GASB wants it recorded, and we are available to assist the district with help in getting those footnotes done or assessing the agreements. What's important to do is watch those agreements as you're signing them during the year to determine if they might actually constitute a lease, because there's kind of, you might not think you're necessarily renting somebody else's equipment because of the way it's worded in the agreement, but you might actually be. There's something called an embedded lease where, you know, the example that's given is a coffee service where, you know, somebody brings it in and they're providing them coffee, they're providing the machine. But so you actually are using their equipment, but you might not think of it just because it's a service being used. So it's something to be aware of, something to assess. And like I said, if we have any questions, please reach out to us. We can help the district work through that and provide resources to at least get started.
Yeah, so like copiers, release copiers.
Copiers.
That's probably the one I can think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think, potentially maybe iPads or Chromebooks, potentially, but it depends, if you're buying them, then
Yeah,
it's
I
a
think
different
we've got
story,
everything
but
purchased there.
yeah, it's the random stuff like that that'll count for it, and software doesn't count in this round, but it'll count in a couple of years.
Yeah.
So, and with that, I will open it up for questions.
Questions?
I just want to thank Amber too, because she is awesome to work with, and I appreciate all that she does to help me in my position, and we work well together, so.
And we thank you, Lisa and Kyle.
And she's gonna be doing some work for, I don't know if you are, but we've got a membership audit that our auditors carry out for us coming up now.
Yep.
So,
If DPI selects a certain specific percentage of all school districts every year to have a test of your Friday counts. And so this year the district got chosen, and we'll be setting up some time. We're gonna try and do as much of it virtually as we can, and work through everything, and we'll be in touch with all kinds of questions.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
All right, item 7, questions and comments from people in attendance. Persons who wish to address the Board of Education may make a statement as long as it pertains to a specific agenda item. Individuals should not expect to engage in discussion with the members of the Board of Education. Board of Education President may or may not respond to statements made. Each person will be allowed up to 5 minutes with a maximum 30 minutes total for this agenda item. So no one has signed up to speak. All right. We will move on then. Number 8, for the consent agenda. Seek approval of the minutes of the past meeting, January 12th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion is approved. Number 9, consider approval of financial reports. Any gifts?
Yes, I have 2 again from Tina Melvin at the elementary school, reported that they received 10 cases of cranberry juice from Ocean Spray Cranberries, from Brenda McDonald. Is the person from there that gave them that. And then the 4K received a donation of books from Christine Goodness from the Wood County, Wisconsin Bookworms Club. So that was very nice of them. So those were what the 2 thank yous were for tonight.
All right, thank you. With the gifts, I seek a motion to approve financial reports.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Leo, seconded by
Carrie.
Carrie. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. No unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to new business. Number 10, set annual reimbursement rates for per diem meals and mileage.
So the meals, we're gonna ask that you leave the same, day of travel, 2 meals capped at a total of $36. Full day at a conference, 3 meals capped at $46. Leave those the same. However, it is a slight increase on the mileage rate to 58.5 cents per mile, and that's the federal rate. So we'll ask you to set those reimbursement rates.
So moved.
Oh my God.
We are together.
We are in tune.
A
I'll second
motion
it.
and a second.
Quick, what do you think?
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Number 11, consider approval of 6603 agreement with Nakusa School District.
We'd recommend your approval of the 6603 as it is related to a specific student receiving special education services.
So moved.
I'll second that. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Item 12, consider approval of professional staff compensation model.
Okay, so we have obviously been talking about, you've got one. We've been talking about this for quite some time. And you had directed me to work on this, and I have as well consulted with some of our staff on this. From the very beginning, Marissa and Jen, I brought different ideas and things. We talked about things. So the plan that we have laid out, and we've talked about bits and pieces of this in the past. So I gave you three documents. Are there 2 documents or 3? 3 documents. The first one is more along the lines of the traditional, when we calculate the snapshot that we do every January 1 for purposes of negotiations. So we set up a document that looks similar. However, this year, there won't be a negotiation of that in that manner. So, but we wanted you to see a document that looks somewhat familiar to what you've seen in the past. The second document is the reworked pay scale that we had talked about. And so really what this is, this puts our staff on a pay scale. We have not had a pay scale since pre-Act, what was it, Act 10? So you go back to 2009, 2010. So there hasn't been a pay scale since then. This is a fairly simple pay scale. We're basically 3 lanes. There's a lane for teachers who've earned a bachelor's and have really moved no further. There's what we call a master's optional lane. Those are for teachers who seek other education on their own. There's no specific license requirement necessary that we're looking for, and none of that. The other is a master's required. Those are some staff, and we have a few positions where in order to hold that position, you have to have a master's degree. It's a requirement of the licensure. I want to talk about that for a little bit. Initially, we had a 20-step system with a couple of bigger steps. What I'm presenting to you here is a 28-step system. I moved beyond just because we were having problems at that bottom end of the, or I should say top end of this scale, with how people were placing it and whatnot. In order to place our staff on a scale to get started, what we did is we took a look at this and we said, okay, what's your current salary? Because when we tried to look at this by years, it became unmanageable. And the reason it became unmanageable is it costed way out. Well beyond, so this year, if for instance, the cap on negotiations this year is 4.7, it was costing like well above that, near double that in reality. So it was like, okay, with there being no extra money, we can't deal with that. That's just not, that wasn't a realistic place to be. So what we decided to do to make this simple and to get started on this, we took everybody where their salary was and we placed them. So if your salary, if you look at this, if you're looking at that step scale, if you were at, let's say your salary this year was $43,700. Just going to use that as this year's salary. What we did for this year's purposes, we would have placed you at $44,250 just for that initial placement. We're not changing the salary mid-year, but we're saying, okay, for this year, they'd be placed at $44,250. And next year they would move up to $45,500. So we were trying to give folks, I don't want to call it the benefit of the doubt, but we were trying to give them as much as we could and placing them to the next step up for the purposes of placement. What the result is what you see on this page. The result is an average increase this year, and everybody is different. And that is because we had to place them all in a spot, and everybody was wildly different on salaries, right? And that was because we don't have a salary scale. So the average, the increase that we look at is $1,403. It comes out to be about 2.858 as a percentage. That would be the highest percentage. That would be the highest percentage since Act 10. This would be the biggest average increase, at least in the 10 years I've been here, and maybe back to Act 10, those starting days. But because, again, everybody is at a different salary this year, so it makes it really complex. But the lowest increase moving forward this year would be $750. We had one person, because they would move to the master's optional at the beginning step, and they capped at the 2,500. But we certainly had staff 1,700, 1,900, and again, the lowest 750. Moving this forward, it puts people on a stable system moving forward. The average increase over a 7-year period becomes just above $800. I believe it was $821. The previous 7 years, the average was $628. So we've added a couple of $100 to that. The way it works, every 5th year, there is a bigger bump. So first, second, third, and 4th years, the bumps in salary are $750. Every 5th year, it's $1,250. So the question becomes, one of the questions out there, okay, keeping up with inflation. So how do you keep up with inflation on this? Well, if inflation becomes an issue where this isn't keeping up with inflation, you increase those yearly rates. You can go to an 800 or an 850. You can go to a 1,300, a 1,350 on the 5th years. So you increase those rates, but it stabilizes the system over time. It makes it predictable. It makes it so that people are moving. I know we've had some staff that it's been slow movement over time. And so we're trying to, that is in part why we place them the way we are to start this, is to give them a bit of a bump moving up this year, so that now they're going to be on a system that is fairly consistent and they're moving over time. I don't claim it's probably perfect, but it's a start and it gets us moving. I did go, I went back through and I consulted, overall, I just consulted with 8 different staff members. We talked about it. I have not consulted with the entire staff, but received a little bit of feedback. That's why the change that you see in adding the steps at the end the way I did. There's probably 20 different ways you could look at this. There's what we're looking at this year in dollars is, again, it's the biggest dollar increase we will have done in the 10 years I've been here. It's the biggest percentage increase. Each staff member is going to be different this year just because of where their own salaries were. And it's a system going forward. It can be adjusted going forward. Questions, thoughts?
It's about time. We need to definitely do something to retain the staff that we have here and be competitive in getting staff that we still need, if there's even anyone that wants to come, because there are not any teachers out there, and things since Act 10 have gone downhill, 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 and then everyone wonders why we don't have teachers.
I mean, and there's probably a couple of different possibilities, again, for inflationary adjustments in this going forward, that make it possible to adjust this scale if there's, if the district has to do some inflationary adjustments on it. One of the things, this year's going to be interesting. Healthcare is a wild card for us, a big wild card. Lisa and I have chatted briefly with Susie Kaiser, or it's not Susie Kaiser anymore.
Susie Hogue.
Susie Hogue. We've chatted briefly with her. She basically said, put our seatbelt on because it might be kind of a wild ride on what we see in terms of insurance rates. And we are anticipating, based on the experience we had this past calendar year, that'll be, so I'm trying to present to you a system that is generous to a degree, but still recognizes we may have some challenges this year in staff costs. So.
This is within the budget, correct?
Yeah. And this goes to my statement a little bit about dialing things back in the next year or two with a few things. That goes to that statement as well. But at the moment, yes, we can make this work.
I mean, I know healthcare is the big problem, and I know there's been some talk about pooling all the schools together, which would, I think, help us because we're small.
We have looked in.
Yeah.
We've looked into some regional pools.
Yes.
And at the time we looked into those, we were still outperforming those regional pools.
Okay, right.
Now, experience has changed a little. So, and that's one thing we're going to talk to Susie about is, do we need to go through and do a full, basically a request for proposals and look at that and requote and look at how that's developed.
If you go into a regional pool or a bigger pool, you might get lucky and find a young, healthy staff, and you might get unlucky and find a staff that has some
That's
catastrophic
what happened the first
problems.
time.
And so the first time we looked at it,
Just wasn't-
it just was not going to benefit us.
Well, you remember the situation 8-10 years ago when Rapid self-insured.
Yep.
And they ended up in serious trouble at the end of the school year because they literally ran out of money. So it's just,
So we vote this in tonight, no matter what the insurance does, this is what it's gonna be come June.
Yeah.
This is what they're gonna get next year.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to consider approval of professional staff compensation model.
I'll second it.
Right, got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
It's about time, that's all I can say.
Amen.
Yeah, we definitely need money for the teachers. All right. Now we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried.
What I will do is likely schedule a staff meeting of some type in the next week or two to roll that out and explain the system. I'm going to guarantee you not everybody will be happy, but I also know in talking with staff, there are some that are and see the long term on this. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item is consider approval of Port Edward School District Crisis Plan.
So you saw that, and so I forwarded you the crisis plan in your board packet. It is several hundred pages, a couple hundred pages. So I did not print that for you. So the major updates to that are really revolve around just some vernacular regarding our lockdown drill that we caught in the plan from the first time that we published it that were consistent. We did go through and worked with the police department to do that audit as I talked about at the last meeting. We caught a few things in the audit that had been missed in terms of just updates we needed to make and a few of those pieces. So we've put those in motion. We had a couple of, if you remember several years ago, we installed the safety film. We had a couple of windows that were missed in some spots. And so we've updated those, furthering the camera pieces. Beyond that, no other major changes to the plan as it reads. If you got to the part that's pandemic, I really just wanted to put C 2019 to 2022 superintendent's files on pandemic, because it's like 2 little paragraphs on pandemic. And it's kind of like, okay, we've lived that. So, yeah. But beyond that, the major aspects of the plan remain fairly consistent from the last time we did an update. You know, and it brings things to light. I'm going to talk to Donna and Kara about it's, you know, we do need to reemphasize practicing parts of the plan that we haven't. And because there are some parts in the plan that we should sit down with the staff and go through and practice. Not parts that we practice with the kids necessarily, but with the staff, and at least talk through it. So I'd ask for your approval of the updated plan. It's got to be done every 3 years. We did a major walkthrough on it this year to do some updates.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Leo, seconded by Carrie. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Next item is opportunity for individual board member comments. Start with Ben.
Oh, it's good to have the kids in here again to talk about sports. Congratulations to Taylor Martin on her rebounds and her points. It's always good to see athletes do that. Good to see both programs getting some wins as they wind down the year. So if you haven't been out to a game, try to get out there, catch them in person or on TV. Forensics is coming up, a couple other different events in the school. So good to see things like that in a school dance. So lots of positive. Thanks again to all the staff, and that's all I have.
All right, Carrie.
Yeah, congratulations to Taylor Martin for those achievements. That was nice. Good to hear that we will have a spring variety show of sorts, and good to hear that meeting for forensics is coming up too. And just to get out and support those students when they get those activities, whether it's sports or otherwise.
All right, Leo.
While this isn't immediately applicable in the Port Edwards district, the spring primary election is coming up on the 15th. There are races in different districts around the state. Spring primaries are notoriously ill attended, and with a number of people running for some offices, they literally are given opportunities by a very small number of voters. So I would encourage everybody watching or participating to make sure that you have made arrangements to either register to vote or get absentee ballots, or make sure you vote in person if that's what you want to do. Most important thing, of course, is that you do it, because it's the foundation of everything that we have.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
I just want to make sure that everyone knows about the art exhibit coming up at the Alexander House. I think it's the 27th is Sunday, which is the opening day of it, but that's always a fun thing to see, and good to know that our art students have a place to showcase their work.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what was said earlier. Good to see the student representatives here and all the activities that is going on in the school district. It's awesome to see. And I just wanted to mention that I was at the School Board Association meeting or convention in Milwaukee a couple weeks ago, and there was a lot of inspiring speakers and good sessions that I attended. So thanks for permitting me to go. Yeah, that's all I have. We're gonna take a break first before we
Take a break, kind of get reset up to do the
Yeah.
policy review.
All right.